Come now. Don't mess with me, Starlink. Alright, hopefully I'm live. Hopefully Starlink isn't going to kidnap me every 5 seconds. So, wow, I just decided to spend my morning playing around with stuff. Ethical dilemmas, moral dilemmas. Kind of got a little carried away with a video that I did yesterday and thought, this is actually a bit of fun, and people do like to play around with it and have their little opinions on things. And so I figured, why not? Let's have our little opinions on things. So the first one I've got racked up is it's a who do you choose to save? You can only save one. Who do you save? So let's jump over there. Hopefully I can play this without dropping out. We'll see how we go. And here we go. Ethical dilemma 1. You can only save one.
You are the captain of the Mallory 7, an interstellar cargo transport. On your way to the New Lindley spaceport, you receive a distress call. There's been an explosion on the Telek 12, and its passengers are running out of oxygen. As you set a course to intercept, you check the Telek 12's manifest. It's currently transporting 30 middle-aged individuals from some of Earth's poorest districts to the labor center on New Lindley, where they'll be assigned jobs on the spaceport. But as you approach the Telek 12, you receive a second distress call. A luxury space cruiser called the Perito has lost a thruster, sending them careening towards an asteroid belt. Without your help, the 20 college students headed for vacation aboard the Perito are all doomed. So, with only enough time to save one ship, which one should you choose? This dilemma is an example of a broader class of problems where a life-saving resource, such as a donated organ or vaccine, is scarce. There are many schools of thought on how to approach these problems, and one of the most influential is utilitarianism, an ethical view first systematically developed by Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. The Mallory 7, an interstellar cargo transport. On your way to the New Lindley spaceport, you receive a distress call. There's been an explosion on the Telek 12, and its passengers are running out of oxygen. As you set a course to intercept, you check the Telek 12's manifest. It's currently transporting 30 middle-aged individuals from some of Earth's poorest districts to the labor center on New Lindley, where they'll be assigned jobs on the spaceport. But as you approach the Telek 12, you receive a second distress call. A luxury space cruiser called the Perito has lost a thruster, sending them careening towards an asteroid belt. Without your help, the 20 college students headed for vacation aboard the Perito are all doomed.
So those are our choices. The college students or the workers. Interesting. So the workers are probably as productive as the college students if they're building the future of something, the future of a new planet or whatever. So I don't know, do we go to age maybe? Maybe age is the next thing. The younger people who haven't lived their lives yet. I don't know. I'm not seeing any participation in the chat whatsoever at this point in time. So I'm not sure if anyone's not participating or I just haven't got the settings on. Let me check. Anyone can send a message. Yep, you're all good. You're all good to chat. So, I think age actually might be the next level that I would consider. Or I certainly wouldn't consider students to be more productive towards any future in outer space, I guess, than I would consider general workers. Although students are part of it's a tricky dilemma. It's a tricky one, and I'm not privy to it, haven't watched it before, so I don't necessarily know that there is an answer. Usually with these dilemmas, it comes down to what's ethical. Until we got some participation in the chat, how about we just continue watching?
So, with only enough time to save one ship, which one should you choose? This dilemma is an example of a broader class of problems where a life-saving resource, such as a donated organ or vaccine, is scarce. There are many schools of thought on how to approach these problems, and one of the most influential is utilitarianism, an ethical view first systematically developed by Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. In this view, you should choose the action which promises the greatest sum of happiness, though how to define and measure happiness is a difficult question. For example, hedonists would suggest a happy life contains the most pleasure and the least pain. Others might say it's the life where your desires are most fulfilled. However happiness is defined, most would agree that saving 30 lives has the potential to generate more happiness than saving 20. But is it enough to consider how many lives would be saved? Or should you also consider how many life years would be? Assuming a life expectancy of 80, saving the lives of the students with an average age of 20 saves 1,200 life years, while saving the workers with an average age of 45 saves 1,050. All things being equal, a longer life should promise a greater sum of happiness than a shorter one. So perhaps saving the smaller ship actually has the potential to generate the most happiness.
Well, there's a twist I didn't think of. Generating the most happiness. That was not where I was going to head to. But I did think that the youngest who hadn't lived a good portion of their lives yet was the next best option. I don't know. But clearly the chat doesn't have any contributions yet, so we will continue watching.
If all these calculations feel a bit cold, you may want to consider a different approach. The philosopher Derek Parfit argues we should give priority to the worse off, since benefits to those groups matter more than equivalent benefits to the well-off. In this view, it's more urgent to help those whose basic needs aren't met, even if they're harder to help than those who are flourishing. But often, determining which group is truly worse off can get complicated fast. In our case, Earth is still beset by drastic inequalities in wealth and opportunity. And those able to afford a vacation on New Lindley and transport on a luxury cruiser are no doubt among the most well-off people on the planet. The workers, by contrast, are among the most disadvantaged, traveling away from home for months at a time to perform service work. With fewer resources and opportunities, it's likely they've experienced more hardship in their lives than the vacationers, so maybe they're more deserving of rescue?
Yeah, I don't know that hardship. I don't know that. I don't think that I would consider hardship. Not because, well, this is part of the dilemma, isn't it? ethically, you probably should, but I would actually consider who's going to contribute to whatever it is that you're doing. Like you were sending them to build a new planet or civilization somewhere else, then it's those who contribute towards that end goal or not. I don't know. But I'm not sure that I'm in the camp of choosing the least over the most. Yeah. There's a kind of haves and haves not kind of situation. Which I think kind of defeats the purpose of building a new civilization, doesn't it?
On the other hand, the students have experienced less life overall, so perhaps they're worse off. Or maybe none of these variables should influence our decision. The philosopher John Turek famously argued that in these types of cases, the numbers don't count. Each person is deserving of equal concern and respect, so the best way to decide which passengers to save is to flip a coin. While this might seem arbitrary at first, this approach treats all parties equally, giving each individual an equal chance of being rescued. Could any passenger argue that they're being treated unfairly by a coin flip? It's tough to say, but how they and you feel about the result may be another dilemma altogether. Start practicing for tough decisions using these 5 tips to
Okay, a coin toss. A coin toss. My tongue's tied today. Is not something I had thought of, but it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? In the grand scheme of things, tossing a coin. Am I? Your stream is set to live. Oh, thank you. So you probably are trying to yak with me. Hang on, I don't know what's going on. Someone's just let me know that we are not set to. How do you want to go live? Visibility public. Sorry, guys. Come on, where is it? Customization. Live chat. Approved. I set that to anyone. Save. Okay. Everyone can send messages. Oh my God, what a disaster. Hey, Anne. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened. I'm starting to get frustrated with all the settings being upside down here. Sorry, guys. I don't know. Do we need to rewind that video and watch it third time? I'm sorry. Sorry, guys. Hi, Peppermint. Hi, Mama Jama. Oh, my God. I was looking in the settings and it didn't look. It was saying anyone can send a message. Like, I'll show you. I couldn't believe someone sent me a replace this screen with hang on. Let's do it this way. Show this tab instead. See, it was saying to me anyone can send a message. And then someone sent me a message on X saying no, that's not what it's set to. So I had to go and set it again. That was poopy of them. Anyway. So did you actually watch it? Do you want me to start again? Type a 1 if you want me to start it again. I was trying to work out how to say hi. All right. Yeah. See, the thing is, I know the answer now. See, I played one that I didn't know the answer to. Helping. Okay. Helping people who will benefit most is good for the whole community. There you go. I kind of get the idea that a coin toss is the fair way to go about it, like, because neither side can complain that they should be. I don't. Yeah, you don't want me to play it again. All right, JC, you're gonna have to hang in there and watch it one more time. Let me get it up on the screen. Let's get it back to the start. Boink, boink. That's about the start. And then maybe I should turn the volume up a bit as well so y'all can hear it. All right. You can only save one. All right. Here we go. So before they get to the explanatory bit of the different philosophies, I will stop it and see what you reckon. So here we go. Is it on the screen? We all can see it. Coolies. Let's go.
You are the captain of the Mallory 7, an interstellar cargo transport. On your way to the new Lindley spaceport, you receive a distress call. There's been an explosion on the Telic 12, and its passengers are running out of oxygen. As you set a course to intercept, you check the Telic 12's manifest. It's currently transporting 30 middle-aged individuals from some of Earth's poorest districts to the labor center on New Lindley, where they'll be assigned jobs on the spaceport. But as you approach the Telic 12, you receive a second distress call. A luxury space cruiser called the Perito has lost a thruster, sending them careening towards an asteroid belt. Without your help, the 20 college students headed for vacation aboard the Perito are all doomed.
So there you go. That's the ethical dilemma. Who do you save, the workers or the students? And so JC has been here from the start, shaking his fist, saying, "Turn on the chat, Aussie." So who do we save, the students or the workers? If I give you options to type numbers, it's actually a little easier to type a number than to type the whole word. So 1 for students, 2 for workers. Who do we save? And let me just say thanks to the person who notified me. Anne says the workers. You're already on the way to the workers. Why stop? Interesting answers. Okay. Why the workers, Anne? Tater Pie says 2 is the workers. I kind of leant towards the workers as well when we first started. And Mama Jama, toss a coin. 3, toss a coin. Right. Well, you know what? This one you already knew the answer to. So, Lynn Niece, the workers. So give me your reasons why you say the workers. Like, what's the reasoning that you gave for the workers? For me, it was like, productivity on the new planet. Because I'm a curmudgeon. Okay. What are the other reasons that you gave the answer workers? Tater Pie says, because you're already on the way, why stop? And that kind of makes sense too. You are already on the way. Why would you waste time switching directions? So yeah, I thought of that too. Because the workers have a current use and the students are only a potential future use. That's correct. I thought the same thing. JC, you can hide wherever you like. I don't know that that's gonna save you. It's kind of like putting your head between your knees and kissing your ass goodbye. So there you go. But I do have others racked up that I haven't watched previously. So N says no because the workers have. Oh, I already said that. Yes, that's not a new comment. All right. All right, let's watch the rest of it.
So, with only enough time to save one ship, which one should you choose? This dilemma, where a life-saving resource, such as a donated...
Let me just say to Gloria, this is what happens with ethical dilemmas. We all try to invent another option that doesn't involve anybody dying. The same thing happened with the trolley car dilemma, and I'll do the trolley car dilemma eventually. Because I've already uploaded, I thought it's probably pretty boring to go through that one again, but if you haven't watched it, I can do the trolley car dilemma again. It's probably the most common one that they give in philosophy class, and it's also the most common one where people want to come up with a third solution. It's that avoiding the responsibility is why we gravitate to that. Like, I don't want the responsibility of choosing who's going to die. So it's a very natural human response. Lynn says workers, because they're already in poverty and would have an opportunity to get a great job and provide better quality of living. Very interesting answer, because that one is discussed in utilitarianism. And also myself and others saying, the students have only a future potential, whereas the workers already have a current use. That's also utilitarianism. So what is the utility for now, like the immediate use of them? Did I poop the bed, Fubar? No. No, I didn't poop the bed. I'm just in a weird sleep pattern. To do live streams with other Americans means I have to mess up my sleep pattern. And then I'm stuck on that messed up sleep pattern for a while. So JC says, in a spaceship, there is likely a rank structure. The leader would do the calculations and communicate the decision that preserves the mission. Well, I guess in this case, you're the leader. The scenario is saying that you're the leader of this spaceship. Who are you going to save? Well, the spaceship that's coming in to save everyone, obviously, not the ones that are broken and careening off course or whatever. If it's refusing responsibility, I don't know if it's refusing responsibility as much as creative problem solving, right? Like rooting the horn on the trolley. I think you meant tooting, but yes. Tooting the horn on the trolley would be, the obvious solution to get everybody to. Yeah, I thought you meant tooting. I didn't think you were reading it. Good mission planning would account for having emergency procedures to help make this decision by working on it outside of the stress. Well, this is a good point, JC, but think about it from like the perspective of the Titanic. You remember the unsinkable Titanic? They had emergency procedures. Everyone should have been able to fit into a lifeboat. What happened to that? They ended up ditching some of the lifeboats before they set sail. And so that good emergency procedure didn't really help in the case of the Titanic, did it? So Anne says, the goal, I guess, is to further humanity. The workers have more knowledge, probably kids already, and still mostly capable of reproducing. Again, these are all good points. This is, again, utilitarianism. We're thinking about their usefulness to society, which is where I came from when we first opened it. Like I said, I hadn't heard of this particular problem before. Hi, humans, to infinity and beyond. It's a bit of Buzz Lightyear for you by Tony. Yes. In this case, I'd save the younger and letting the middle class drones out of their misery. Okay, so they're all interesting solutions, but in this particular case, we didn't go with the third option, or many of us didn't go with the third options. We all went with utilitarianism. MacGyver. Dun, dun, dun. JC would pull out the MacGyver tricks. So just to understand the schools of thought in philosophy and how they relate to this particular situation.
Is scarce. There are many schools of thought on how to approach these problems, and one of the most influential is utilitarianism, an ethical view first systematically developed by Jeremy Bentham and John Stuart Mill. In this view, you should choose the action which promises the greatest sum of happiness, though how to define and measure happiness is a difficult question. For example,
so essentially utilitarianism is what's best for the most. That's what he's saying. That's Mill's philosophical school of thought on this kind of topic. The point of these thought experiments is to explore what we value, why, and how we balance competing rights. Correct, Amanda. That's exactly what we're doing. Because it's actually, it is all very related to what's going on in the YouTube sphere right now. So people are confused as to why I'm trying to raise different schools of thought regarding different cases. And this is the school of thought that I have been trying to, well, it's not a specific one. I am actually a leaner towards utilitarianism. I think that's because I might be on the spectrum. Come on, Starlink, come back now. You can do it. Bring me back, Starlink. Sorry about that. So yeah, these are the discussions I've been trying to raise. You know, what is it that we value? Why do we value it? And how do we balance competing rights? Exactly as Amanda is saying, that's why I'm trying to raise these conversations around other cases. Like the same schools of thought or the same things that we value, why, and how we balance them applies to the Karen Reid case. It applies to all cases that we look at. And just because we end up leaning one way with one case doesn't mean we lean that way with another case. So I'm going to give you some more what would you do thought experiments just to play around with these ideas a little bit more. But again, that's the reason I'm trying to raise these conversations so that we treat cases with a little more care rather than just diving into something and going, my gut feeling is, and I'm sticking with it. Sometimes you need to question your gut feeling. Sometimes the gut feeling that you've got is the very thing that you're hanging the prosecution for. For example, your gut feeling tells you this person's innocent, but the prosecution's gut feeling is the thing that you're angry about because they're trying to prosecute the person. If it's both based on gut feelings, then neither of you is right. And you're just being a hypocrite saying, no, my gut feeling counts and yours don't. The point being, in a court hearing, you need evidence. And that evidence needs to be backed up by corroboration, especially in a highly circumstantial case. The only way you can go about a circumstantial case is having corroboration upon corroboration upon corroboration. And so these are the only things that I've been talking about lately. I have certainly not taken a side on any of the cases except Karen Reid, because I can clearly see the imbalance and the imbalance of the competing rights in Karen's case. It's very clear to see. I don't know that it's a little bit more murky in the other cases. In the other cases, it's a little bit more about gut feelings and not anything that you can put down to the evidence tells us this or the evidence tells us that. So anyway, the coin flip Tony was the third option. And it never occurred to me until I actually heard it said here. So, in this particular case, the reason they give for the coin flip is because it's fair to both parties. And I agree with that. It actually is fair to both parties. You're just going to be sitting there when the coin's flipped, hoping like hell it's your party that wins the coin toss, right? Even between supporters of utilitarianism, there is a debate about who is worthy of consideration. Correct, there is. There are interesting discussions. They are. And of course, that can go into further discussions about whether you feel part of a certain community and your loyalties to that community, as well as you say, rationalism, egocentrism. Yeah. So there's a lot of different areas that it can fall into. But I really just wanted to keep it really simple for today because some of these topics can blow people's brains and they don't want to think about it. So today it's just cartoons, real simple stuff, keeping things very simple. So let's listen to the reason that they came up with for the coin costs.
Hedonists would suggest a happy life contains the most pleasure and the least pain. Others might say it's the life where your desires are most fulfilled. However happiness is defined, most would agree that saving 30 lives has the potential to generate more happiness than saving 20. But is it enough to consider how many lives would be saved? Or should you also consider how many life years would be? Assuming a life expectancy of 80, saving the lives of the students with an average age of 20 saves 1,200 life years, while saving the workers with an average age of 45 saves 1,050. All things being equal, a longer life should promise a greater sum of happiness than a shorter one. So perhaps saving the smaller ship actually has the potential to generate the most happiness. If all these calculations feel a bit cold, you may want to consider a different approach. The philosopher Derek Parfit argues we should give priority to the worse off, since benefits to those groups matter more than equivalent benefits to the well-off. In this view, it's more urgent to help those whose basic needs aren't met, even if they're harder to help than those who are flourishing. But often, determining which group is truly worse off can get complicated fast. In our case, Earth is still beset by drastic inequalities in wealth and opportunity. And those able to afford a vacation on New Lindley and transport on a luxury cruiser are no doubt among the most well-off people on the planet. The workers, by contrast, are among the most disadvantaged, traveling away from home for months at a time to perform service work. With fewer resources and opportunities, it's likely they've experienced more hardship in their lives than the vacationers, so maybe they're famously argue don't count. Each person is deserving of equal concern and respect, so the best way to decide which passengers to save is to flip a coin. While this might seem arbitrary at first, this approach treats all parties equally, giving each A and you their dilemma altogether.
So there you go. I do like the coin toss answer. And when I first watched it, I actually didn't think of that one. Okay, so yeah, I don't want to talk about specific cases, all right? The point here, the point right now is really just how we all question uh, our own ideas, and whether we actually have a solid basis for questioning our own ideas. So I know that before I studied this subject, I didn't have a basis for questioning my own ideas. Once I studied the subject and I realized which category of philosophy I had sort of grown into in my adult years, that kind of made it a lot easier for me to be able to go, all right, now I do need to question my ideas. And so that's the problem I think that we all have as humans, is that we go with the gut instinct. We never question our own opinions or ideas or where they came from. And so it's easy to judge others, but on the same token, if you're judging others by the very same thing that um, you're not holding yourself to, then there's kind of an ethical dilemma there, isn't there? And so that's why I'm focusing today on the ethical dilemmas rather than case specific. So Carla says the numbers count 40 instead of 20 without considering their age, education, etc., just based on saving twice as much people. Right. And that can also bring us back to the trolley car problem. So just in case you guys haven't watched it, let's switch over to the trolley car problem. The trolley car problem is on tab. I lost it. Tab, I lost it. Tab, it disappeared on me. Hang on, give me the tab. Actually, if I do that one, you're going to get interruptions. Let's do this tab instead. Share this tab. Let me check he's got it. Okay, this is the trolley car problem. And this is actually my lecturer for this topic. So he actually does give quite a number of them. But because I did this course, I already knew, ways to answer the questions given different philosophies. So I wanted to find different ones outside of the course that I hadn't heard before so that we could all like brainstorm them together. But this particular one, this is a trolley car problem that I presented earlier in the day. So
trolley car, and your trolley.
Let's get to the start of it.
This is a course about justice, and we begin with a story. Suppose you're the driver of a trolley car, and your trolley car is hurtling down the track at 60 miles an hour, and at the end of the track you notice 5 workers working on the track. You try to stop, but you can't. Your brakes don't work. You feel desperate because you know that if you crash into these 5 workers, they will all die. Let's assume you know that for sure. And so you feel helpless until you notice that there is, off to the right, a side track. And at the end of that track, there's one worker working on the track. Your steering wheel works, so you can turn the trolley car, if you want to, onto the side track, killing the one, but sparing the 5. Here's our first question. What's the right thing to do? What would you do? Let's take a poll.
Let's do the poll. Let's do the poll on what would you do, okay? We can't invent new scenarios because we don't want to face the question. The question is, do you take the left track and kill 5, or do you take the right track and kill 1? So those are your numbers, 5 or 1. Which is your option? And I'm going to be honest with you. When I first started this course and I heard this problem for the first time, that's right. Many don't want to make the decision. But this is a point of leadership roles. We can all point fingers at leaders, but we don't consider what it is that they're juggling every day. We don't want to have to make the decision. You know, there's a tidal wave coming towards the coast. Who do you save? You've got half an hour before it hits the coast. Who do you save? If you're the leader of that area where the tidal wave's going to hit, you have to make that decision. And many don't want to make the decision, but they're quick to judge those who do make the decisions. And so that's, I guess, part of, assessing our own processes in our own minds. It doesn't mean that you have to go out there and shout it from the rooftops that that's exactly what you would do or wouldn't do. So Tony says the coin flip. It's not an option this time, Tony. The only options are left, kill 5, or right and kill 1. So who would have thought? Exactly. As simple. And guess what? You're in space. So would a coin toss even work? You'd throw it in the air and it would just stay in the air. It wouldn't actually land. Anyway, we've got some votes. We've got 1s mostly. Right, JC, but you still haven't given us an answer to the trolley car problem. And you only get 2 choices, 5 or 1. We're going to listen to what the students have to say about it in a moment, just so we have, some feedback on why they voted one way or the other. Shall we do that then?
How many would turn the trolley car onto the side track? Raise your hands. How many wouldn't? How many would go straight ahead? Keep your hands up, those of you who would go straight ahead. A handful of people would. The vast majority would turn. Let's hear first. Now we need to begin to investigate the reasons why you think it's the right thing to do. Let's begin with those in the majority who would turn to go onto the side track. Why would you do it? What would be your reason? Who's willing to volunteer a reason? Go ahead, stand up.
Because it can't be right to kill 5 people when you can only kill 1 person instead.
It wouldn't be right to kill 5 if you could kill 1 person instead. That's a good reason. That's a good reason. Who else? Does everybody agree with that reason? Go ahead.
Well, I was thinking it was the same reason on 9/11. We regard the people who flew the plane into the Pennsylvania field as heroes because they chose to kill the people in the plane and not kill more people in big buildings.
So the principle there was the same on 9/11. It's a tragic circumstance, but better to kill 1 and so that 5 can live? Is that the reason most of you had, those of you who would turn? Yes? Let's hear now from those in the minority, those who wouldn't turn. Yes?
Well, I think that's the same type of mentality that justifies genocide and totalitarianism, In order to save one type of race, you wipe out the other.
So what would you do in this case? You would, to avoid the horrors of genocide, you would crash into the five and kill them?
Presumably, yes.
You,
Yeah.
okay, who else? It's a brave answer, thank you. Let's consider another trolley car case and see whether those of you in the majority want to adhere to the principle, better that one should die so that five should live. This time you're not the driver of the trolley car, you're an onlooker. You're standing on a bridge overlooking a trolley car track. And down the track comes a trolley car. At the end of the track are 5 workers. The brakes don't work. The trolley car is about to careen into the 5 and kill them. And now, you're not the driver. You really feel helpless until you notice, standing next to you, leaning over the bridge, is a very fat man. And you could give him a shove. He would fall over the bridge, onto the track, right in the way of the trolley car. He would die, but he would spare the 5.
Okay, so this new scenario, how do we feel about that one? Did we hear it all, or did my internet drop out? Please tell me that you've all heard it. I will repeat it just in case. So, new scenario, trolley car, 5 people at the end of the track, except the track is straight. There's no turning off the track. The track is straight into those 5 people. Now you're standing up on the bridge looking down on it, and there's a fat guy next to you, and you could push him and he would stop the trolley car and save the 5 people. So it's the same question. Kill the 5 or kill the 1? It's kind of the same question as before. It's getting out of hand. It is getting out of hand, just a little bit. I don't know what to call you because I can't see your name, and I'm not sure why. Anne says, no, that's actively choosing death instead of choosing between deaths. That was my assumption of it too. Carly says, in today's society, if he was rude, it would be okay, but it would still be murder. Right. Today's society is really weird like that. There's some weird stuff going on in today's society. Thank you for answering the question, Gloria. We all heard it, so that's good. So what if you don't act? Well, that's actually a very interesting question. Are you complicit as an observer who doesn't act? That's an interesting question. But again, it's the natural choice for us to not have to make a decision, to not have to decide between one or the other. That's right, JC. The bystander effect is alive and well. Right, and we also have a sue happy society today. Like, Good Samaritans generally get sued, so regurgitating. Yeah, regurgitating is safe, and a lot of people do that, so I get you. So for me personally, I feel like if you're going to push the guy, you're actively choosing, as Anne said, you're actively whoops. I think I'm back. Sorry about that. Well, I'm glad Starlink's doing it in between breaks and not when you're trying to listen to the exercise. Carla says 5. No, not muted. I have crappy internet, and I will drop out. But if I drop out when you're trying to listen to an exercise, that's make me replay it. But if it's just me dropping out, I can repeat myself, no problems. But I forget what I dropped out on. Anne says, if it's not going to put your own life at risk, yes, you're complicit if you don't act. Right. But you're complicit in murder if you push the guy over, too. So it's a hard decision, isn't it? It's a difficult position. So let's have a listen to what the students say. Yes, save the 5. Most people opt to save the 5 if there's not a choice where they don't have to make a decision at all. Or a very common thing is, as was pointed out earlier, to invent another option like toot the horn. But we're going to assume that the trolley car doesn't have a horn, okay? That's right, JC. There's no right answers. They're designed to be difficult, to make you think, exactly. And there isn't a right answer. There's a lot of schools of thought, but I think the takeaway from it at the other end, when you've done a couple of these exercises, the takeaway from the other end is you learn to work out what school of thought you fall into. And, for me, it was more often than not utilitarianism, but there are other schools of thought which we will discover along the way. So let's have a listen to what the students said.
Now, how many would push the fat man over the bridge? Raise your hand. How many wouldn't? Most people wouldn't. Here's the obvious question. What became of the principle? Better to save 5 lives even if it means sacrificing 1. What became of the principle that almost everyone endorsed in the first case? I need to hear from someone who was in the majority in both cases. How do you explain the difference between the two? Yes.
The second one, I guess, involves an active choice of pushing the person down, which I guess that person himself would otherwise not have been involved in this situation at all. And so to choose on his behalf, I guess, to involve him in something that he otherwise would have escaped is, I guess, more than what you have in the first case, where the 3 parties, the driver and the 2 sets of workers, are already, I guess, in the situation.
But the guy working, the one on the track off to the side, he didn't choose to sacrifice his life any more than the fat man did he?
That's true, but he was on the tracks, and you...
This guy was on the bridge. Go ahead, you can come back if you want. All right, it's a hard question. All right, you did well. You did very well. It's a hard...
I would argue that, he was already in danger because he was on the tracks, whereas the guy on the bridge was never in any danger. And so you're pushing him into the danger. But that's just how I would argue it. As JC pointed out, there's actually no right answers here.
Hard question. Who else can find a way of reconciling the reaction of the majority in these two cases? Yes.
Well, I guess in the first case where you have the one worker and the five, it's choice between those two, and you have to make a certain choice, and people are going to die because of the trolley car, not necessarily because of your direct actions. The trolley car is a runaway thing, and you're making a split-second choice, whereas pushing the fat man over is an actual act of murder on your part. You have control over that, whereas you may not have control over the trolley car. So I think it's a slightly different situation.
All right, who has a reply? No, that's good. Who has a way, who wants to reply? Is that a way out of this?
I don't think that's a very good reason, because you choose to, it's either way you have to choose who dies, because you either choose to turn and kill the person, which is an active conscious thought to turn, or you choose to push the fat man over, which is also an active conscious action. So either way you're making a choice.
Do you want to reply?
Well, I'm not really sure that that's the case. It just still seems kind of different, the act of actually pushing someone over onto the tracks and killing him. You are actually killing him yourself.
You're pushing him with your own hands.
You're pushing him. And that's
Right.
different than steering something that is going to cause death into another. It doesn't
good.
really sound right saying it now.
No, it's good.
But I'm up here.
It's good. What's your name?
Andrew.
Andrew. Let me ask you this question, Andrew.
Yes.
Suppose standing on the bridge next to the fat man, I didn't have to push him. Suppose he were standing over a trap door that I could open by turning a steering wheel like that.
Does that change it for anyone? Does that change the dilemma for anybody? The truth is that you're never going to choose correctly. You're just going to choose, even if you're doing nothing for fear of getting it wrong. I think that's exactly how it is. And because you don't often find yourselves in these situations where you have to make these split decisions. So, blimey, someone could ponder themselves into a mania. Well, you're not really meant to do that. It's really just asking yourself, what's my initial position? After hearing other positions, have I rethought my position? And there's no right answer at the end of the day. It's really just having the ability to ask yourself questions. Can you ask yourself questions? And these exercises, as the others have pointed out, they're thought experiments. They're designed to give you exercises in asking yourself questions, difficult to answer questions. If every time, this is what I found when I was studying this subject, if every time I need a third option because I can't make the decision, that means that I know I'm not actually a leader. So don't put me in one of those positions where I have to make the decision, because I won't. I will be the one that doesn't act because I'm not a leader. But it was good for me to learn that and to know that. So, and I appreciate knowing that about myself now, because now I know my limitations. I don't go out and say, straight away I look at a case and go, oh yeah, that person's guilty. I don't do that anymore. I used to, but I don't do it. Since I've done this course, I realized that, well, that's unethical. Everyone's entitled to a fair trial. I'm not on that jury. I'm not the trier of fact. And so me putting it on my channel and trying to lead people to a conclusion, that's not the right answer. I don't want to lead people to any conclusions. I'm not a leader. So it's good to know, your own limitations. Gloria says, I still say the workers have inherent risk by the nature of their jobs. JC is still trying to find a way out so he doesn't have to answer the question. I prefer a button that no one sees me push. That saves the bridge people. So he's going to change the subject now to a different dilemma. So let's have a listen to.
Would you turn?
For some reason, that still just seems more wrong.
Right?
I mean, maybe if you accidentally is hurtling towards a switch that will drop the trap, then I could. And in another way, I mean, in the first situation, you're involved directly with the situation. In the second one, you're an onlooker as well.
All right.
So you have the choice of becoming involved or not by pushing the fat bit.
Let's forget for the moment about this case. That's good. Let's imagine a different case. This time you're a doctor in an emergency room, and 6 patients come to you. They've been in a terrible trolley car wreck. 5 of them sustained moderate injuries. 1 is severely injured. You could spend all day caring for the 1 severely injured victim, but in that time the 5 would die. Or you could look after the 5, restore them to health, but during that time the 1 severely injured person would die. How many would save the 5? Now is the doctor. How many would save the 1?
Okie dokie. Here's the question. Again, type 5 if you would save the 5, or 1 if you would save the 1. Thanks for listening, Gloria, and typing some comments. Appreciate it. So now we've got a different scenario. The 5 trolley workers have been rushed to hospital, all injured, and then 1 has been brought in who is severely injured. So if you focus on the 1, the 5 will die. If you focus on the 5, the 1 will die. What would your choice be in the situation where you're a doctor? You'll save the 5, Gloria. See, you can't be typing while you're driving. Stop typing now. Please be safe. Are we ready? Ready to hear the students' answers? All right.
Very few people. Just a handful of people. Same reason, I assume. 1 life versus 5. Now consider another doctor case. This time you're a transplant surgeon, and you have 5 patients, each in desperate need of an organ transplant in order to survive. 1 needs a heart, 1 a lung, 1 a kidney, 1 a liver, and the 5th a pancreas. And you have no organ donors. You are about to see them die. And then it occurs to you that in the next room, there's a healthy guy who came in for a checkup. And he's... You like that? And he's taking a nap. You could go in very quietly, yank out the 5 organs, that person would die. But you could save the 5. How many would do it? Anyone? How many? Put your hands up if you would do it.
So it's still working on the same principle. You could save 5 in this scenario, but you need to take out one healthy one. So do you see how the original principle, where you thought I would save the 5, has now become somewhat more complicated? Because now saving the 5 doesn't necessarily gel with the new situation. So how would utilitarianism apply in this case? Is 5 still more useful to society than 1 healthy? Or is there an ethical consideration? So this is why we do these exercises. We bury deeper and deeper into our original thought process, and then as it gets more complicated, we really have to think more deeply about those processes. So even though there's still all of these other options, that means we wouldn't have to make those decisions. Like, as JC says, you got a whole hospital of people, why wouldn't you just use your medics? That's not the options that we're being given. They're narrowing the options just to see whether your decision from originally saving you'd save 5 people over 1 person is different now to saving 5 people over 1 person. If I had qualified immunity, I would save 5. That's also maybe a consideration as to why some leaders in our communities have qualified immunity. It might have been based on something like this kind of exercise. So, how sick are the 5? They're going to die because they all need transplant. And I dropped out. Sorry. So, this is your time to investigate. You're the head doctor. You got to make that decision. So, let's have a listen to the different ways the students think of dealing with this.
Anyone in the balcony? You would? Be careful, don't lean over too much. What? How many wouldn't? All right, what do you say? Speak up in the balcony, you who would. That's a great idea, except for the fact that you just wrecked the philosophical point. Well, let's step back from these stories and these arguments to notice a couple of things about the way the arguments have begun to unfold. Certain moral principles have already begun to emerge from the discussions we've had. And let's consider what those moral principles look like. The first moral principle that emerged in the discussion said, the right thing to do, the moral thing to do, depends on the consequences that will result from your action. At the end of the day, better that 5 should live, even if 1 must die. That's an example of consequentialist moral reasoning. Consequentialist moral reasoning locates morality in the consequences of an act, in the state of the world that will result from the thing you do. But then we went a little further, we considered those other cases, and people weren't so sure about consequentialist moral reasoning. When people hesitated to push the fat man over the bridge or to yank out the organs of the innocent patient, people gestured toward reasons having to do with the intrinsic quality of the act itself, consequences be what they may. People were reluctant. People thought it was just wrong, categorically wrong, to kill a person, an innocent person, even for the sake of saving 5 lives. At least people thought that in the second version of each story we considered. So this points to a second categorical way of thinking about moral reasoning. Categorical moral reasoning locates morality
Sorry about that. Little interruption. So we have the two different schools of thought. I'll just take it back a little just so that we're looking at those on the screen. Consequentialist. So in the trolley car situation, we were using consequentialist reasoning. But then when we went into the doctor scenarios, we came up with categorical reasoning and morality and certain rights and duties. So this is why we consider these exercises. It's not about forcing us to limit our thoughts so we can be brainwashed. It's about expanding our thoughts instead of being entrenched in one line of thought. It's quite the opposite. It doesn't have to be plausible. It's not about whether it's plausible or not. It's about whether you're entrenched in one line of thought or whether you're able to explore others outside of that. So, I mean, I understand that we're all a lot older than these students are, and so they're far less entrenched in their morality or what they've learnt of life than we are. So, well, you're welcome. And Nick, I don't know what to call you because I can't see your name. Thanks for joining us, whoever you are, and participating. So, he's not creating these scenarios, JC. These are not his scenarios. These are thoughts of philosophy that have been taught since time immemorial. In fact, some of these scenarios are Plato era scenarios. Aristotle, they might have been a lot older than the types of stories he's telling, because there were no trolley cars back then. But these are very common stories taught. Gillipud. Okay, thank you, Gilly. Thank you, Gilly. Good to know. I'm going to remember it because I never saw your name to start with. But the next time you come along, actually write your name in there so that I know it's Gilly. All right, so no, I didn't think you were fighting back. All of our brains all want the other option, but we are simply testing our brains here. So if you put yourself in a real situation, then you're going to be dealing with panic and fright and all the other things that that are human emotions that you would have to deal with if you are literally in one of these situations. I think the point of the exercise is you're not literally in one of those situations. And so just in computing it, here are the options. We all leant towards consequentialist in the first scenario. We all leant towards categorical in the second scenario. And it just goes to show that there's human behavior there. Like, we can be grouped into like behavioral patterns, even though I am the first one to say embrace individuality. But we can actually be grouped into these patterns. So interesting. I'm not going to keep sharing this one because it's still a lecture format all the way through, and he's going to launch into a whole bunch of philosophical stuff further from that, and I don't think we're ready for that. I think we just need one that gets closer to the heart of the matter. Can only save one. That's not it. Where's it gone? All right. It's let's go to can only save one. The prisoner's dilemma. Who should you believe? That's the one. Sorry, ads. Go away with the ads. Right. Oh, I had it on the screen. Oh, you're a dickhead. I went looking for it, found it, and I had it there to start with. I'm an idiot. All right. So in this one, we're getting a little bit closer to the case of that person that shall not be named because it causes arguments between everybody. Yes, that is kind of the point, right? Getting outside of thinking rationally and just thinking about where we fall as a species, as a community even. So the ethical versus the moral. That's why these are called moral dilemmas and ethical dilemmas, because it is about the ethical and the moral versus the opposite. So let's have a listen to this one.
The couch watching TV when you hear a knock on the door. The police have just arrived to arrest your spouse for murder. This accusation comes as a total shock. In your experience, your partner has always been gentle and loving, and you can't imagine them committing a grisly murder. But the evidence is serious. Their fingerprints were found on the murder weapon. Your spouse insists they're innocent. I know it looks bad, they say, but you have to believe me. If you don't, who will? Should you believe your spouse, even though the evidence against them looks damning? Take a second to think what you would believe in this situation.
Okay, so there's the dilemma. Should you believe your spouse, or what would you believe in this situation? It's kind of two questions, but let's start with should you? Should you always just stick by your spouse because they're your spouse, regardless if there's some evidence that makes them look like they might have done it? I know you guys are a little bit behind me, so I'll just wait for you to catch up, which we will eventually. If I didn't drop out while you were watching it, please don't tell me we. Okay, so I did just drop out, but I'm not sure if you saw the video. I need someone to tell me that you saw the video. Hello. Okay. It seems like we have a communication problem. Okay, he's caught up finally. Anne says, I'd believe he's probably guilty, but wait for the evidence until I completely gave up on them. All right. And we don't have Earth to Starlink. Oh my God. Well, at least you have caught up with me now. Jesus. I would tell her to stay silent and start calling lawyers. Oh man. I would if I would be inclined to say if you're guilty, plead guilty. There's nothing like telling the truth. And the other side of telling the truth is generally you're going to get a lot of sentence. If you put up no resistance whatsoever and you don't cost the state tens of thousands, if not millions of dollars in a lengthy court trial, you're generally going to get a lot of sentence. If you done it, you done it. You know what I mean? Like, just tell the truth. That's my theory. Even, with my own kids, as they were growing up, I always told them, I'll stand by you no matter what you done. Even if you did murder someone, I'll still stand by you, but you got to cop to it. You got to say the truth. Always stick to the truth, and I'll always stick by you. But anyway, well, it's still lying if you're saying that you didn't do it, even though that's the way the system works. See, this is why we have ethical dilemmas. It is ethical to say, I did it. It doesn't matter if the system is set up so that if there's not enough proof beyond reasonable doubt, you're still being dishonest. If you did it, you did it. Do you get what I'm saying? This is what I think could be going through. No, Shari, I didn't have 8 kids. I only had 2 kids, but this is the ethical dilemma that we're presenting, JC. All right, there's a way out of it because of beyond reasonable doubt. But is it ethical? Is it the right thing to do to just go, oh no, I didn't kill those people, even though you did? It's not the right thing to do. And you need to, if you do the crime, you do the time. That's just how it is. So Anne says, I went into the Karen Reid trial thinking she was probably guilty, but the evidence changed my mind fast. Right. So I actually didn't go into it thinking probably guilty. I just didn't pay attention to it because I thought probably guilty. I had already done the deep dive into all of the questionable statements and what evidence they did have before I went into it. So I sort of went into it already thinking something's up with this. Something is really up with this. So, but again, if Karen Reid did it, I would be of the same opinion. I would expect her to be honest and say, yeah, I did it. It doesn't matter if you could possibly get out of it. That's not being an ethical and moral person. That's being unethical and trying to get away with it. So this is the ethicality is different than legality. It sure is. And just because there's a legal way for you to get away with it, does that make it morally right? Just because there's a loophole where you can get away with it, does that mean it's the morally right thing to do? I'll give you another scenario, completely different. Let's say you're a cop and you're working the beat with another cop, and you do a sting, and in the midst of that sting, your partner flogs $1 million off of the drug dealer. Now, it wasn't you that flogged it, so there's a legal loophole that you could get out of it and not have to say anything, and your partner could get away with the $1 million. And who cares, because it's just a drug dealer. Nobody cares. But is it ethical? Is it morally right to just turn a blind eye to that? So the reason I gave you a different scenario where it's cops is because this is exactly what we're looking at, and pretty much, all the cases that we're studying right now, we're saying these cops are not telling the truth. They know who killed Officer John O'Keefe, but they're not telling the truth. So in the moral dilemma I just gave you, if you know the truth, then are you going to fess up? Are you going to tell your superiors that that's what he done? Are you going to be the one that says this is the right thing to do? It didn't take long for me to question their statements. No, it didn't take long for me to question it all either. But it's too late. It's already done. He took the money and you found out about it afterwards. So now you've got to decide whether you're going to tell someone. See, you did it again, JC. You went for another option where you don't have to, like where you try to stop the crime from happening instead of dealing with the scenario that I gave you. It's the right thing to do to say to your superiors, he stole the money, right? I wonder what impact on society we would witness if honesty and accepting responsibility for a crime was responsibly incentivized. Well, I think it is actually. Well, is it fairly, responsibly and fairly are two different things. What we could think is fair might be very, very different between, every single one of us in the room right now. But responsibly, I think it is responsibly incentivized. I think that you can actually have time knocked off your sentence if you plead guilty early, accept responsibility, take what's the other thing that they accept when you're going through? I'm trying to think of what they all are, because America's got different standards to Australia. Regretting what you've done, showing humility, all of these human things that you need to do. If you can do all of those things, then yeah, I would say it probably is responsibly incentivized, but I can't speak for America because I haven't seen a responsibly incentivized case. So I can't speak for America. I can speak for Australia, and I do think that we do have responsibly incentivized schemes, but that doesn't mean that we're, great compared to America. We still have a very high recidivism rate, for example, which is probably up there level with your recidivism rate. So, yeah, I'm not saying we're perfect. Remorse, thank you. It was the word. Taking accountability and remorse is the other word that I was looking for. So yeah, moving on to the dilemma that we're looking at. I'd say nothing, but I wouldn't have a relationship anymore. Right. That's probably the most responsible thing to do. So Carla says she would believe him. So right. So there are incentivizations for accepting responsibility for what you've done. So, but not many people, like, even that's a dilemma in itself, isn't it? Like, the dilemma is, do I get a less sentence because I admit it and I show remorse and I get the lighter sentence and I've done the right thing? Or do I deny it and I put the state through an expensive, the taxpayers, that is, through an expensive court process and end up with a longer sentence? That's exactly what Sarah Boone weighed up, right? She could have admitted it and she would have got a lighter sentence. In fact, if you added the lighter sentence to the time that she'd already served, I think she was only looking at like 5 years. But she decided to run the gauntlet and not be honest and not show remorse and deny that she did anything, and worse still, blame the victim. So now she's got, I think it's up to 22-year sentence. So, even that in itself is a moral dilemma when you've got to look at, do I admit it and take the rap and do the time? Or do I fight it all the way and end up with a bigger sentence? Or perhaps fighting it all the way because you can see that there's a way out in the beyond reasonable doubt kind of standard, that you're willing to run that gauntlet. So, yes, there definitely are more incentives, but like I said, I couldn't speak for America. So, but anyway, let's listen to the rest of this dilemma. Should you believe your partner if there's some evidence to show that they might have done it?
Part of what philosophers call the ethics of belief, a field of study that explores how we ought to form beliefs and whether we have ethical duties to believe certain things. The question here isn't about what you should do, such as whether or not you should find your spouse guilty in a court of law. After all, you wouldn't be on the jury in their trial. Rather, it's about what you should believe to be true. So, what factors should you consider? Perhaps the most obvious is your evidence. After all, to believe something is to take it to be true, and evidence is, by definition, all information that helps us determine what's true. From this, some philosophers draw the conclusion that evidence is the only thing that ought to determine what you believe. This view is called evidentialism, and a strict evidentialist would say it doesn't matter that the accused is your spouse. You should evaluate the evidence from a neutral, objective point of view. Taking the perspective of an unbiased third party, your judgment of your spouse's character is a relevant consideration, but finding their fingerprints at the crime scene is surely stronger evidence. So, from an evidentialist point of view, you should either believe your spouse is guilty or at best remain undecided. Some philosophers present evidentialism only as a view of what's most rational to believe, but others, like 19th century evidentialist W.K. Clifford, think that following the evidence is also morally required.
Okay, so let's now take this into perspective with Richard Allen's wife. Yes, I said his name. Dun, dun, dun. Sue me. Did she decide to look at the evidence? Just given what we've heard about the phone calls between them, when he was saying, I did it, she was saying, no, you didn't. Was she actually looking at any of the evidence? JC says, I have trust with my spouse. I would admit to her and she would admit to me the truth. What to do next is the hard part. I'm not ratting her out because loyalty is also important. Yep, that's fair enough. And I'll just keep going with the there are no correct or incorrect answers here. This is just a matter of whether you're willing to look at your own viewpoint and pull it apart and question yourself. It's not necessarily anything you need to type publicly into the chat. So please don't feel like you have to, but thank you for participating if you do. I ain't going to judge you if you do.
One argument for this view is that having well-informed, accurate beliefs is often vitally important to determining the ethical way to act. Another argument is that there's something unethical about being dishonest, and refusing to follow the evidence is a way of being dishonest with oneself. However, perhaps there are other ethical factors in play. Although the evidence against your spouse is strong, there's still a chance that they're actually innocent. Think for a moment about how it would feel to be innocent and have no one believe you, not even your own partner. By not trusting your spouse, you run the risk of seriously hurting them in their crucial hour of need. Moreover, consider what this lack of trust would do to your marriage. It would be incredibly difficult to continue a loving relationship with someone that you believed or even strongly suspected was a murderer. You might try to pretend to believe that your spouse is innocent, but could you really go on living that lie? According to a theory of the ethics of belief called pragmatism, these kinds of practical considerations can sometimes make it right to believe something even without strong evidence. Some pragmatists would even say that you morally owe it to your spouse to believe them. But is it even possible to believe your spouse is innocent just because you think it'll be good for your relationship, or because you think you owe it to the accused? You might desperately want to believe they're innocent, but can you control your beliefs in the same way you control your actions? It seems like you can't just believe whatever you like when the truth is staring you in the face. But on the other hand, recall your spouse's plea. When we say things like this, we seem to be assuming that it is possible to control our beliefs in some way. So, what do you think? Can you control what beliefs you have? And if so, what will you believe about your spouse? Okay, here's another one.
Let's not jump into another one. But it's interesting that all the things we just discussed were actually mentioned after that. And says, just because you don't believe them doesn't mean you don't get them a good lawyer and protect their right to a fair trial. Well, there's that too, but that's not the first thing that I would do. I would encourage them to tell the truth. That's my first thing. I would be encouraging them. You probably still need a good lawyer, even if you are going to make a plea of guilty. But I'm still going to tell them to tell the truth. And, you know, I've been in one of these situations where my son was in a car accident. The police tried to stitch him up with something he didn't do. He was in a car accident. They said he was outright. So I asked him outright, you know, were you drifting? He said no. And I said, well, in order for you to plead guilty to these charges, to get it out of the way and over and done with, you have to lie and say you were drifting. And he thought about that, and he thought, yeah, the only way out is to lie now. So I said to him, it's your choice. And he chose to tell the truth. He wasn't drifting. He lost control of the car, and it was neglect. It wasn't drifting. So I encouraged him to tell the truth. And they made that very difficult for him. It wasn't the easiest path. The easiest path was to lie, and they would just put him in prison for 3 years. And to me, it just didn't seem right to lie to get out of something that could have been more horrendous. Do you get what I'm saying? So I think telling the truth is always the right answer, regardless whether a good lawyer could get you off. But even a fair trial is not fair if you're telling a lie. If you're going into that knowing full well that you did it, then you're not even starting on fair. You're not starting on a fair footing at all. You're starting on a lie. So it's always best to tell the truth, in my opinion. But what I did notice with the Richard Allen confessions is that he's telling his wife, I did it. She's saying, no, you didn't. He told his mum, I did it. No, you didn't. Every time he tried to tell them that he did it, they weren't going to believe him. And that's why I played that video. I mean, there might be other considerations. I'm not saying there isn't. I just played the video just to show you the ethical boundaries on whether or not you're just automatically going to believe your partner or not. So don't get it all twisted like I'm saying there's not other considerations, because there obviously is. But at the end of the day, you need to tell the truth. And it seems to me like he was trying to tell the truth. He wanted to tell the truth, but his family wouldn't let him. So if he told the truth, they weren't going to love him anymore. That was his major concern. That's obviously all of our major concerns. I, on the other hand, as far as my kids go, I told them I'm still going to love you. I'm still going to try and get you a good lawyer and try and, get you the help that you need. But you need to tell the truth, whatever the truth is. So Anne says, I backed my partner of 20 years only to find out I was a fool. I think personal experience colours your point of view. I think so too. I think it certainly does. And I can understand why Richard Allen's mum and wife are in denial. I'm sure that we all would be in denial. But at some point, you need to be able to speak openly with your partner and say, I need to know the truth. We all need to know the truth from our partners. If our own partner cannot tell us the truth, then what kind of relationship do you have to begin with? So you need to know the truth. Gloria, I hope you're finished driving, lady, or I'm going to scold you. I have a problem with automatic truth telling, as I've witnessed too many abuses of people who do tell the truth. So what are you saying? That it's okay to lie if someone's going to abuse you? Oh, I think I get what you're coming from. Like you're talking about, like in a partner relationship who's abusing you. Sometimes you go like hide the money so you can get out of that relationship. Some saying lie, tell them you haven't got any money. I think we're talking about different things. I'm talking about criminal activity like murder, for example. We're on a true crime discussion here. We're talking about actual murders. So I think drawing that delineation, I don't think that actually applies. I don't think that Yeah, but see, that's the problem. What you're hearing through Andrea is through a third person. It's hearsay. You didn't actually hear him say it. There are other people in that courtroom who are just as qualified as Andrea who didn't hear what she heard. They heard a perfectly calm and normal and not panicked and not crazy person admitting to his wife that he'd done it. So, that's again driven by, as we were talking earlier on, the confirmation bias. Andrea says what confirmed you already thought, and so you're going with Andrea. But what about the other people in the courtroom who don't think that that's what they heard? Why don't they count? Because they're not Andrea, or because they don't confirm your bias? So you don't need to answer that. It's just something you need to ask yourself. That's why we're going through these ethical dilemmas today, because it's that point where you've got to be asking yourself these questions. It's not necessarily about me asking you these questions. If you're not prepared to ask these questions of yourself, then I don't think that saying, well, I follow so and so and they said it, is actually conducive to anything except following the leader. Like, that's not your decision. You're not thinking for yourself. When you question yourself, you're thinking for yourself. When you don't question yourself and you just go seek out people who agree with you, that's not doing what we're doing here. Kimberly, I agree with you. I agree with you entirely, and that's because I am on the spectrum. That's part of what makes me unique, I guess. um, I know that not everybody's on the spectrum, is what I'm saying. I'm not trying to, say I'm better than you guys. It's quite the opposite. Um, People on the spectrum have a very strong sense of justice and injustice when it happens. This is very unique and individual, but according to the traits of people on the spectrum, this is a very common trait. So the fact that I believe in truth above all else doesn't mean that all you guys have to, but I'm happy to say that I do, if that makes sense. But it's certainly not, I'm not putting it on you guys that you have to, or that you need to feel bad if you don't. I certainly am not coming from that angle at all. So, all right, guys, let's not careen off into all of the reasons A, B, C, D, fucking all the way to Z, okay? That's not what this conversation is about. So I'm just going to ignore those. The only thing I was talking about is whether or not you believe your partner, all right? Let's not talk about all the other stuff. I'm not here to argue with you. You've got your opinions. I'm not trying to change them, all right? And I would actually appreciate the same respect in return. I'm not going to try and change your opinions. All I'm trying to show you here is, dilemmas so that you can work out in your own mind how your head ticks. But I'm not going to change your opinion. I'm not going to tell you that you have to, or that this is the way I see it, so you have to agree with me. That ain't what I'm going to do. So I would appreciate the same respect in return. I am not talking about treatment of him, the cops, the DNA. I'm not talking about any of that stuff. So I would appreciate it if you don't try to change my mind. The respect goes both ways. So yeah, and I don't have a mind of it, basically. I'm not on the jury. My honest to God answer is, I don't know if he's guilty or not. I just know that he deserves a fair trial and he is innocent until proven guilty. The burden of proof is on the prosecution. That's all I know. And I have no other thoughts on it. So, more exercises. Okay, there's also the prisoner's dilemma. I'm not sure if you want to go into the prisoner's dilemma. Tell me if you do or don't. The prisoner's dilemma is another common one that you will often come across if you're studying justice and the philosophy of justice. Is I'm not forcing you to do anything. I'm just asking you to question your own, to think critically and question your own. If you have an opinion and you're just steadfast in your opinion, and you're not going to sway your opinion anyway whatsoever, and you're not even going to question your own opinion, then I don't think you have a valid opinion. It's only that point where you question it and you ask yourself, is this a is this based on feelings, or is this based on, you've got to ask yourself all these questions. All I'm doing here is giving yourself a whole bunch of scenarios that might help you to ask those questions. So it's not a tactic, I don't think. Shari D says, I am quiet because I don't have a partner, but I was raised to be honest and not lie. As a previous person mentioned, I'm still getting over lies after lies from my past decade-long relationship. That's fair enough. It's fair enough. We can often be very, very surprised at what our partners are up to behind our backs. So I have some more dilemmas. So tell me if you would like to visit some more. There are some more. There's like okay, Starlink, you suck. Let me just make sure that this Starlink thing is going to pass. It makes, yes, the prisoner's dilemma. Okay, it makes my stomach turn thinking about being dishonest. Seriously would affect my mental health. Yes, and there's another reason things could be affecting Richard Allen's mental health. This is one of the things I was thinking about yesterday. Could he be being affected because he's trying to confess but no one will let him? Does that affect your mental health? For me personally, if I was putting my loved ones offside by insisting that I have to tell the truth, and they were insisting that I can't tell the truth, and that created a problem between me and them because I mentally feel better telling the truth, but they mentally don't feel better if I tell the truth. Is that not a torturous sort of situation to be in? So would that not affect your mental health? Would that not affect you being able to sleep at night? So that was something I thought of yesterday after hearing the confessions. I ain't saying I believe the confessions or I don't believe the confessions because I wasn't in the room listening to them. So I don't believe that by hearing someone else's opinion who was in the room actually gives you an idea of what happened. All you know is what was said. So how the jury takes what was said, that's a whole other story. They're the trier of fact, not us. So yes, Shari, the satellite keeps stealing me. All right, so right now we got a little bit of good time with the satellite, so let's quickly jump over to the prisoner's dilemma. Oh, shut up with dilemma. Okay, so we should get through this without any interruptions because they all just happen all in a bunch. Hang on.
Let's say Mr. Blue and Miss Red have each been arrested for some minor crime. The police think they committed a more serious crime, but they don't have enough evidence to convict them. They need a confession. They take them and put them in separate rooms so they can't talk, and play a little game. To try to force a confession, the police give them each a choice. Admit your partner committed the crime and you will go free. We'll pardon you for the minor crime, but your partner will have to spend 3 years in prison. If you stay silent and your partner lets us know that you were the one who really did it, then you're gonna have to go away for 3 years. They know that the police don't have any evidence, and if they both stay silent, then they will only go to prison 1 year each for the minor crime. If they both betray each other, then they'll both go to prison for 2 years each. Okay, each partner can do one of two things: stay silent or betray. Staying silent would be cooperating, and betraying would be defecting. If they both stay silent, then they each spend a year in prison. If one betrays and the other stays silent, then the betrayer goes free and the silent spends 3 years in prison. If they both betray, then it's 2 years each. So what are they going to do? Well, they should cooperate. That's the best option for the group, if we add the total number of years in prison. But let's take it from Red's perspective. If she thinks Blue is going to stay silent, then she should betray so she can go free. Going free is better than spending a year in prison. If she thinks he's going to betray her, then she should definitely betray. 2 years in jail is better than 3 and being made a fool of. Blue is in the exact same situation and will think the exact same thing. He should betray if she stays silent, and he should betray if she betrays. They should have both cooperated, but from an individual standpoint, they notice they could always gain by defecting, if they have no control over what the other person's gonna do. So they'll both defect to try to better their own situation, but come away not only hurting the group, but themselves. Individually, they're worse off than if they both cooperated. This situation.
Did you all follow that? Did we all follow what was going on there? Or do you want me to play it again? Because he said it fast, it might be difficult to comprehend what was going on the screen. So I don't like how cops can lie either, Shari. But the fact of the matter is they're allowed to. Until you have a law that says they're not allowed to, then they're allowed to. So, not liking it is really neither here nor there. They have to have, you've got to have a law that says they're not allowed to do it for it to be effective in, making any sort of defense, I guess. So I got it. My brow is sweating. Right. So it's a difficult one. Do you cooperate? You know that cooperating is going to be the best scenario. Staying silent, which was an option that we had in the previous do you believe your partner, staying silent is a different thing to whether you believe them or not, but staying silent is now one of those options. Do you stay silent? JC says, I choose to cooperate. A trustworthy friend is one you can trust. All right, so JC would cooperate. But what if your friend's not someone who cooperates? Is this like dependent on your friend being trustworthy and that they're going to cooperate too? What if you don't know that? Well, James, I don't actually know of any place that has a rule that they're not allowed to lie. They're allowed to lie here in Australia. We're not allowed to use the read technique here, but they're still allowed to lie to you. There's no law against it. So if you can give me a place where that's actually the case, where they're not allowed to lie and they still do, give us an example. Not sure. I think that humans in positions of power Okay, get it all off your chest while we're not playing a video, Starlink. P.S. You suck. All right, I've missed a bunch of comments. So Anne says if they have children, they should tell the truth. Oh, if they have children, they should cooperate. Well, cooperating is telling the truth. So in this scenario, so Shari D, I know. I mean, if people were honest in the first place, the police wouldn't have to lie. Yeah, I kind of feel that too. If you eat them out, they could. I'm not sure I understand that. Rat. Oh, I gotcha. If you rat them out, they could come after you later. Well, yeah. Tester lying, James says. An example is cops going on the stand that defend blatant civil rights violations and getting away with it. I don't know that that's a good example of what you just said. I don't know that that's a good example of what we were talking about. That's a completely different example. I thought we were talking about whether or not there's a law that cops can lie or not when they're interrogating. All right, the police lie, so I wouldn't trust them. No, I don't. And this is what they do. They breed their own mistrust because they act dishonestly. So I do agree with that. All right. Yes, this is a long one. It sure is. Oh, sorry. Shari is talking about the Starlink kidnapping. It does happen for a bit. Sorry. Kimberly says, I cooperate. In this scenario, I cooperate. Truth above all else. Right. JC's out of here. Ciao. Thanks for joining in. Has been an excellent discussion. You've been most participatory. Thank you. Right. So I think I've caught up now. So let's have a look at the math. Hopefully he's very quick with the math so we don't have to do our brains in.
The situation is pretty made up, but it has some real-world analogs. A common example is with marketing. Let's say two cigarette companies, Red Strikes and Smooth Blue, are deciding how much money they should spend on advertising. Since the product they each make is identical to one another, advertising has a huge impact on sales. For simplicity, let's say their choices are to advertise a bunch or not advertise at all. And there's just 100 people in this society and they all smoke. If both don't advertise, then just by random chance picking cigarette boxes, 50 people buy Red Strikes and 50 people buy Smooth Blue. At $2 a pack, they each make $100. Let's say advertising costs $30. If one person advertises and the other does not, then 80 people will buy the cigarettes from the ads and 20 people buy the other ones. The advertiser makes $160 minus $30 for ads and comes away with $130. The non-advertiser didn't spend any money but only made $40. If they both advertise, again, half will buy Red Strikes and half will buy Smooth Blue. But since they both spent $30 on advertising, they only come away with $70 each. Same deal, both people cooperating and not advertising is the most preferable situation, but both companies can see that advertising will always make them more money. But unlike the prisoners in jail, these companies can talk and try to influence each other. From here, Blue would be better off if Red didn't advertise. Red wouldn't go for that because that would be worse for them. Blue could try to convince Red that they would both not advertise, the only other situation where they're both better off. But without any real obligation to each other, there's nothing that's stopping them from trying to advertise to gain more of the market anyway. If you think your opponent's gonna not advertise, then you're better off advertising. Although we're still making assumptions to make this situation work too. With this model, we're assuming they only play once. The game changes when the players have a chance to build a relationship and work together to get more gains over time, or punish each other by not cooperating. Also, to make the model work, we have to make up rules for the players. Assume they're basically computer programs with predictable actions. These guys are creepier than they were in my head. They were supposed to be cute. For the prisoner's dilemma and other similar models, we're assuming they are rational agents. A rational agent is a hypothetical person that will always pick the option that they predict will work out best for them. They're not really thinking about the gains of someone else. Seems selfish, but it is something that real people generally do too. People always want what's best for themselves, and we don't like to be made a fool of. But if you put real people in the prisoner's dilemma, people don't always defect like the model predicts. In one study, 40 people playing prisoner's dilemma games through a computer without ever meeting or talking, only playing each opponent once, these are one-off games, using a payoff matrix that looks like this, cooperated an average of 22% of the time. These people never cooperated, these people always cooperated, these guys cooperated on half of their games and everyone else is in between. This is a lot of cooperation coming from a model that predicts no cooperation. The largest group did act like rational agents, but most people tried to cooperate at least once. It's because, well, there's more to real people. We are social creatures, and even in one-off scenarios with no guarantees or obligations and no chance to build a relationship, we're still thinking or obligations. That's not really still useful. The model is just trying to point out the dilemma of certain situations where people are actually hurting themselves when counterintuitively they're only thinking about themselves. And that's why we're modeling using the cold robotic psychopaths.
There you go. Now, that example kind of sums up what's going on with my channel right now. There's like the options for me are I can cooperate with everyone and just fall in line and start talking about how innocent Richard Allen is, and that would give, you know, me more views, and cooperation would be the best thing. But I'm not falling in line, and that's because I don't know. I'm true to myself. I don't know what the answer is here. It's not black and white to me. It may be to everybody else, but it's not to me. And so defecting is essentially not having an opinion. But that's what's getting me into all the hot water here. Does that make sense? So it's conversations like this that I'd prefer to have, because I can't make up my mind on the one that you all want to have. So I'm opting for a more constructive outcome where we all learn something from it, rather than burning all my bridges and taking a position. So I don't want to burn all my bridges and take a position. I'd rather just come from an educational standpoint. Thank you, Shari. Thank you, Dal. And I love it when you join in. I love it when people want to have these conversations. I hate it when everyone's trying to turn the conversation into something else and change the subject and hijack the conversation. It's through having these sort of conversations where we learn stuff. So the other way is really just hijacking it, pissing everybody off, having said your opinion and not really changing any minds, and then moving on to the next channel and burning your bridges. Do you get what I'm saying? I don't want to do that. I'd like to keep my bridges how they are. And so if I can't make a decision about something or find evidence where you guys find the evidence and make logical connections between those things, if I can't do that, then the next best place for me to come from is to try and teach you something. And that biggest thing I think that needs to be learned, especially with this particular case, is how much of your own bias is seeking out confirmation. Do you watch people talk about this case because you need your own bias confirmed? or you feel better listening to them because they're confirming your bias. These aren't answers that I can give you. There are no right and wrong answers. Only you can do it. Only you can sort it out in your mind. Just like these exercises that we've been going through today. You know, the one we just looked at, you can see a right or wrong answer in the prisoner dilemma because you can see numbers on the screen that give you options, that give it to you in black and white. But many times we're not looking at black and white. I feel like we are with the Karen Reid case. There is definitely black and white there. And day and night between that case and other cases that people are saying is just like the Karen Reid case, is day and night. But those are things that are going on in my head. And I'm asking myself, am I the one who's biased? The fact that I can't make a decision as to what evidence supports or doesn't support, the fact that I can't make that decision, that's my issue in my head. That's not your issue. You may have already made a decision in your head. But it's the same as saying, it's the same as saying, I'm dead set sold that this person is absolutely factually innocent. And then the next day, a piece of evidence comes up. Instead of looking at that piece of evidence objectively, you make a new excuse for that piece of evidence. Oh, the cops, they had to be lying. Going to have a comes up. I'm not sure where I got cut off then. If you're already set in your decisions, then you're not ever going to move from that decision when a new piece of evidence comes up, basically. You've adeptly just delineated the issue with US politics. I think I have. There's not enough critical thinking going on. I hate your elections. I really do hate your elections. Like, I feel like there's an extra layer of crazy that's going on with just the normal everyday people when you guys have got elections. I feel like there's just an extra layer of crazy. I can't even put it into words. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of Australians who are going to agree with me. We mostly, to get along with each other, we mostly don't discuss our politics. You know, we may have social media friends that we're bouncing things off, but, you know, if we all get in a room together, Australians just like 3 things you don't talk about: religion, politics, and religion. No, what's the third thing, Anne? Or is it just 2? I've forgotten now. I know religion and politics are 2 things that all Australians, just in our culture, just know that those are things that we don't discuss. Lots of critical thinking, but no one actually listening. Right. So, Anne, quick, what's the third thing we don't talk about? Money. Thank you, Shari. Oh my God, that was so hard. I don't know why I broke my brain on that one. Money, of course. The one thing I don't have, which is why I forgot it. But there you go. Politics, money, and religion. Right. And the fact that Shari answered that, you know, I think Shari is you're not Australian, are you? You're American. Hang on, I've forgotten which one Shari is. I've forgotten where everyone's from. Anne's from Queensland, I think. Kimberly's definitely USA. I'm not sure about James Bond. I've forgotten where you're all from, and I'm sorry. I probably should know. Money, money, money. Money, 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 money. Exactly. So, yeah. In there was another, like, an ethical dilemma that my cousin asked me, or my cousin's husband asked me, like, a little while back. We were just discussing things in general. It wasn't a serious stem off of anything particular, but he was like, so imagine your grandma is, like, 90 years old, and she's pretty set in her ways, and she's like, what was the example that he gave? Let me think about it. Dig, 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 dig. All right, she believes in God, but you don't believe in God. This is just a hypothetical, right? Your grandma is very devout Christian, very much believes in God. She's 90 years old. She likes going to church. It's her thing. She loves doing it. But you don't believe in God, and you don't ascribe to the beliefs that she has, for example. So the ethical dilemma is, do you badger her until she believes what you believe? What is the point of doing that? If you're atheist and she's not, she's a Christian, what do you gain by making your grandma be an atheist? What is the gain there? And is it ethical? And so I'm not sure if I'm putting it across the right way, but I'm kind of like putting it into the same picture with, like, I started a YouTube channel because this is my interest. My interest is showing people, the stuff that I've learned. And I know the stuff that I've learned because I've passed these courses and I know it really well. And so when I have a situation come up that I'm stuck with, I'll pull it apart a certain way, and then I'll show everyone else how I pulled it apart. And so I do see it as the same kind of thing. Why would you come over to my channel now and try and make me do something different? This is my interest. This is what I do. And this is what I do best. And now it's going to rain and we're all going to get cut off. But anyway, that's the ethical dilemma. It's the same as saying, what do I gain by making my grandma be an atheist when she's a devout Christian? And it's not hurting me that she's a devout Christian. It doesn't upset my life if that's what she's doing. So what is there to gain? Am I making sense here? Am I even connected? I don't know if I'm transmitting out there to the world right now because I'm not getting a message. Oh, hang on. I got some chat messages now. Well, thanks for that, Just Lake. Much appreciated. People are not used to creators making us think outside the box. I don't specifically need you to think outside the box. I'm just like, if you wanna, here's some ideas. I don't care if people didn't show up for the stream today and didn't learn anything from it. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me if you guys have your own opinions. I know that I've been trying to keep the conversation on track, and that's been getting frustrating. But that's not because I don't think you're entitled to your opinions. Esoteric, is it? Okay. I don't know. It probably is esoteric now that you're thinking about it. I was really actually coming from the philosophical side, but I guess that is esoteric, isn't it? There is no gain. That's right. I don't feel that there is. So there is no gain in that situation. So yeah. And You're describing a real situation for me. I argued mildly when she was healthy. I read her the Bible when she was very ill. See, I don't even argue with my grandma. My grandma's an odd sock. Like, she is such a nice person, like, to know, like, in her heart, she's a lovely person. She would never hurt anyone. She would never say anything bad about people. She's just such a lovely grandma. Well, she's not really my grandma, and I think you guys already know that. My grandma was murdered. She's actually my grandma's sister. But she's a lovely person, and she's very much devout Christian. And I don't specifically believe in God. I believe in the concept of God, but not the way she does. And I don't even bring up religion, or if she does, I let her talk about it. But also, she's a devout MAGA. She's a full Make America Great Again. She feels that if Trump is in power and America is great again, then Australia will be great again, that we will benefit from that. I completely disagree with her. But I'm never going to say it out aloud that I disagree with her because I respect her opinion. I respect that she has her own way of thinking and her own opinion. And also, she thinks that greenies are horrible, that greenies trying to save the frog. it's always a conversation that comes up. I never argue. I just sort of slink into the background and let them talk about it. But I'm one of those greenies that would probably try to save the frog. You know what I mean? I would tie myself to the frog, save the frog. But they're so not those sort of people. They don't like, the conservationist types, which I am. But nonetheless, I have no problems with them being, not conservationist types. It makes it difficult when, you want to be a save the environment kind of person without going overboard. And people think you have to be one of those persons who goes overboard because that's their own picture of what a conservationist is. But anyway. Yes, thank you for that, Carla. I do try to. It's not just about staying true to myself. It's just that I can't be something other than myself. Okay, I'm not a pretender. I'm not an actress. I can't do those things, and I can't pull them off convincingly. The only way for me to be successful with my channel is just to be who I am, to be my authentic self, and that is sometimes not doing what people want me to do. So if I was an actor, I would probably try to pull off a different personality because I've been making waves. Maybe that would help me get along with people better. But the other thing I think about with that, like, even if I was an actor and I was trying to please everybody, how often can you please everybody? There's always one in every crowd, So I would be torn as to who I was going to be pleasing because you can't please them all. So interesting sort of dilemma. So, yes, that was never any of my relatives' wisdom. In fact, that wisdom came from my therapist, my autism therapist. I was stressing because people are pointing fingers at me for smoking a bit of weed, but just leaf, because I don't like to get smashed. I haven't done it for a long time. I gave it up. But when I was smoking a little bit of leaf, people were up my ass about it. And so I was talking with my therapist and I was like, is it really wrong that I smoke a bit of leaf? Like, I'm not really getting smashed off it. I'm just taking the edge off the anxiety. And he had always said to me, everything in moderation. So it's always stuck with me. So long as you're not abusing stuff. Anne's grandma adored Joe Bjork Peterson. I had to say something, but never disrespectful. I don't know that I ever had an opinion on Joe the peanut farmer. That's all I remember. That's all I remember about him, to be honest. And I just remember he was a peanut farmer and his wife was a cook. His wife had good recipes. I don't actually remember much else about that. I didn't get into politics until much later in life after I finished uni. Actually, I think it was while I was at uni. I'll tell you when I got into politics. When what's that silly broad's name got chucked into jail? Pauline Hanson. When she got tossed in jail. That's when I started taking notice of politics. There was a couple of things that happened that year, not just her getting tossed in jail. Can't stand a silly broad. I think she needs to be not in politics. But she got tossed in jail, and that kind of sparked my interest, taking more notice of what's going on in politics and how the hell did she get thrown in jail? We're supposed to have like freedom of speech and freedom of all these things. It was probably the turning point where I realized that we're not really free, that there is there is consequences. I don't know that she deserved the consequences of her mouth. Sorry, I got carried away. It might happen a little bit more frequently too as the rain moves over. Gloria says, I would tell the truth about what I believed, but I would never try to convince her it's her belief. See, I don't even bother telling my grandma the truth. I would just stress her out. She, as it is, she thinks I'm going to get chucked in jail because I'm too outspoken. She knows that I'm outspoken, but she thinks I'm too outspoken. She sits there stressing all the time that I'm probably going to get, banged. State of affairs if your grandma is worried about something like that. Does that not tell you about the state of affairs when grandma's worried about just talking about things that you might end up getting nabbed? Is it for money or therapy? It's actually for company, because I live in the middle of nowhere. It's actually for company. And then even when I'm around people, they don't want to hear what I've got to say because it's usually over their heads. It's usually like computers, everyone glazes over when you mention computers. Maths, everyone glazes over. Science glazes over. Basically, no one wants to hear what I got to say at home. So it's more for company than anything else. So it's nice that people want to hear what I've got to say instead of just glazing over. But I know that there's still a lot that do glaze over. I'm sure today's stream was one of those, glaze over type streams. No one wanted to hear it. But I'm glad that there was at least, a handful of yous that joined in and were at least curious. So, that's a good thing. Hang on. Something's going on. Stop it. Oh, clicking on the wrong side of my mouse pad. So anyway, it's probably best before this storm comes over. Happy to delve into AI. That's how you hooked me. Oh, cool. Yeah, see, people glaze over with AI too. Like, I'm sure there was at least a half a dozen people who said, AI, I'm out. And they unsubscribed straight away. But I've been experimenting with it. Like I have phases where I don't look at it for a while, and then next time I look at it, it's like progressed to some like mind-boggling amount. So then I'll have another play with it to see, what that progression is, and if it's more accurate than it ever was before, or like I like to play with it in that sense. And I guess the games I've been playing with it too lately is about the fact that it can see, in the current read case, it can see, AI can quite obviously see that there's some bullshit going on in that case. That's what amazed me about the AI. I'm just like, no freaking way. Like, if the AI can see it, when you understand where the AI is drawing its information from, it's drawing its information from a pool of information out there. It's not just the media. Whereas, a lot of people are just totally media oriented. They only get their information from the media. Whereas the AI is getting it from law databases and like a whole pool of information. And the fact that AI can see how freaking obvious it is that something weird's going on in that case, that said a lot to me. So yeah, I share your interest in the AI. I look for intelligent and kind channels. I don't understand much of the technical stuff, but maybe it'll start sinking in. Yeah. So I try not to get too technical. So Abby and I have been talking about this a lot, and we kind of agreed that we do have people who are technical and want to get into the technical and want to at least discuss some of the technical. And then there's a lot of people who don't. And so I don't want to cater for one or the other. I want to be able to like do a bit of a mix of both. And so the technical people are getting a technical fix, and those who aren't so technical are still getting some information that makes sense to them. So that's what we're trying to do. I don't know how well we're doing with that, but that's the struggle. It's always the struggle. Are we getting too technical, or do we go too deep? Or, was that just deep enough for the tech heads, but now we've got to break some of it down into, some more simple sort of language for those who are not tech heads. So we're always sitting on that fence trying to sort of juggle how we're delivering the information. OpenAI has a model under lock and key that can detect things humans cannot. Right. I think they all do, to be honest. I think that of the multiple ones that are the primary software, I think they all actually do have those particular things, yeah. Things that not everybody else has access to. I struggle to apply economic models. Did I miss it, or have I cut off? Oh no, I'm here. I struggle to apply economic models to the real world. That's weird. Economic models are meant to come from the real world. Isn't that where we develop them from? I'm not a student of economic models, so not sure what you mean. Oh God, I hate typing. But you know what? I'd rather type on a keyboard than a limited interface. I freaking hate the phone and those little on-screen. I hate on-screen keyboards. I loathe on-screen keyboards. Like for the first 20 years that mobile phones came out, I always had my kids do the typing. Up until they left home, I always hand my phone to them. You type this message. They liked it. They liked the limited keyboard on-screen keyboard. So until they left home, yeah, I always just get them to do the typing for me. And then once they left home, you know, I kind of had to struggle with it, and I still do struggle with it today. So the prisoners have agency for one thing. Yeah, I'm not following. Okie dokie. Well, it's actually really good to see men actually socializing in the chat. It's very cool to see, because when I started this channel, I only had females. I think I had like 70% female subscribers. So it's good to see a little bit more balance happening. So appreciate that you guys all dropped in, and, you know, maybe covering some of the tech topics that I do is part of what's widening the audience that way. So I really appreciate it. So Shari D, voice to text. I still can't work that damn thing. Isn't much better, as my last comment did not get transcribed as I hoped, parentheses, as I am driving. I still can't work voice to text. That's how useless I am with limited interfaces. If it's on my laptop, I'd have it. No worry, sorted. Because it's on a limited interface, I just can't be bothered finding the freaking settings for it and working out how it goes. So I guess the other thing too, because I live in the middle of nowhere and I don't get mobile reception here, my mobile is kind of useless, so it doesn't really get used. So I'm not really in there all the time playing with it. It's just like I might go shopping once a month and then answer a phone call here and there, or type a text out. So yeah, as far as all the technical things my phone could do, I have no idea, to be honest, because I hate limited interfaces and I'm not using it all the time. But anyway, that's just laziness on my part. That's the can't be bothered factor on my part, really. Phones are useless. And pads, like iPads, and they're freaking useless. Give me a computer any day. So anyway, I'm going to wrap up before this storm comes in and starts cutting us off. And I've said that several times now, and it still hasn't rolled in. And I haven't been Starlink kidnapped the whole time. And now I'm going to end the stream. So that's how it works, isn't it? Thanks for joining me, guys, and glad you tuned in. Hope we all learnt something from it. Fingers crossed. It's all in vain otherwise, isn't it? So talk to you all again on the next stream. Bye. Oh, Joe, I was just about to hang up, dude. Hello, Joe Biffle. Goodbye, Joe Biffle. Ciao, everyone.